I had never imagined that a small, living creature could hold so much power over my happiness. Bella, my golden retriever puppy, had been with me for just 6 months, but in that short time, she had transformed my life. Every morning, her tiny paws tapped against the floor, waking me with playful licks. Every evening, she curled up beside me, a living warmth in my lonely apartment. She wasn't just a pet. She was my friend, my comfort, my family. My sister, however, had never liked Bella. She often complained about the noise, the fur, and the nuisance that came with having a puppy. I tried to reason with her, reminding her that Bella was small, harmless, and most importantly, a part of my heart. But over time, her disdain turned into something darker, a cold, simmering resentment. It was a Saturday morning when everything changed. I was in my room, working on an assignment, and Bella was playing near the balcony. I had left the terrace door slightly open, thinking it was safe with the railing and my careful supervision. But then I heard it, a sharp, terrifying yelp that froze my blood. I rushed to the terrace, my heart pounding in my chest. My sister stood there, her face pale, but her eyes were unnervingly calm. And Bella lay on the ground below, trembling and whimpering. My legs gave way, and I collapsed near her, tears streaming down my face. Why would you do this? I screamed, my voice breaking. Her answer was almost casual, almost like admitting a chore rather than a crime. She was bothering me, she said simply. She's yours, deal with her.
I ser det her, horrified.
My mind refused to accept the reality. My little companion, hurt and frightened, and my own sister, the one person I trusted, had thrown her from the terrace. I scooped Bella into my arms, my tears soaking her fur. Her little body trembled against mine, but I could feel life still pulsing in her. Relief and panic collided inside me. I called the vet immediately, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Each second felt like an eternity, every siren outside echoing my fear. That day, I realized that betrayal could come in the most unexpected forms. It wasn't about money or lies, it was about the destruction of something pure, something innocent, by someone who should have loved and protected it as much as I did. As the vet worked to stabilize Bella, I sat outside, trembling with grief and disbelief. How could my sister do this? Was it anger, jealousy, or something even darker? And, as I held my puppy, I understood that my relationship with her would never be the same. The trust that once existed had crumbled with that single act, leaving only guilt, fear, and sorrow. That night, I stayed awake holding Bella close, vowing silently that I would protect her no matter what. But deep down, I knew that healing, both hers and my own, would be a journey full of pain and emotional turmoil. The ride to the vet was a blur. I held Bella tightly in my arms, her tiny body trembling against mine, and tried to ignore the voice in my head screaming over and over. How could she? How could my own sister do this? My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely keep the carrier steady. Bella whimpered softly, and each sound shredded me further. The fear in her eyes mirrored the fear I felt inside. I wanted to make her understand that I was there, that I would protect her no matter what, but the terror had already left its mark. The memory of her fall kept flashing in my mind, the way she had tumbled, the helpless sound of her little yelp, the emptiness that followed. The vet took her immediately, examining her tiny frame with practiced precision. I followed every move, heart in my throat, unwilling to leave her side even for a second. Every report from the vet felt like a new nightmare. A mild fracture, bruised ribs, and trauma that could take weeks to heal. I nodded numbly, fighting back tears as my mind replayed the image of my sister's indifferent face. How could she do this? Asked the vet quietly, more to myself than to anyone else. The words felt like poison in my mouth. The vet looked at me sympathetically. Unfortunately, accidents like this, or worse, intentional harm, can happen. The important thing now is to focus on her recovery and minimize stress. I barely heard him. My world had narrowed to Bella's small, trembling form. I realized that my grief wasn't just about what had happened physically. It was about trust shattered in an instant. She was my sister, the person I had grown up with, shared secrets with, laughed with. And yet, she had crossed a line I never imagined she could. When the vet allowed me to take Bella home, I carried her back gently, as if she might vanish if I didn't hold her carefully enough. I set her on my bed, covering her with a soft blanket and stroking her fur, whispering apologies that weren't mine to make. "I'm so sorry this happened, Bella. I'll never let anyone hurt you again." That night, I barely slept. Every time Bella stirred, I jumped, terrified that she might be in pain or that something might happen again. And every time I thought about my sister, I felt a storm of emotions: anger, confusion, disbelief. I didn't understand what drove her to hurt someone so innocent, someone so defenseless. By morning, I realized the first thing I had to do was protect Bella, not just physically, but emotionally. She had been through trauma, and the fear she now carried could not be ignored. I set up her little safe corner, surrounded by toys and blankets, and sat with her, reading softly to soothe her nerves. But even as I tried to create a sanctuary, the shadow of betrayal lingered. I knew that my relationship with my sister would never return to what it had been. And for the first time, I realized that protecting Bella meant preparing myself for a confrontation I had dreaded but could no longer avoid. Her life had been shaken, but my heart had been shattered, too. And as I held her close, I understood that healing would take more than bandages. It would require courage, confrontation, and the painful truth. Days passed, but the shadow of that terrible morning never left me. Bella was slowly recovering, her little legs still fragile, her trust in the world shaken, but she clung to me as if sensing that I was her only protector. And while I poured all my love into caring for her, the anger inside me toward my sister grew like a storm I could no longer contain. I knew I had to confront her. Avoiding the truth would only allow the pain to fester, and I couldn't let her actions go unanswered. I walked to her room, my hands trembling, my heart pounding, not just with fear, but with the weight of everything I had bottled up in the last few days. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice trembling but firm. I didn't know if I expected an apology, an explanation, or just a sliver of remorse. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. Then, in that calm, chilling tone that I had come to fear, she said, "I told you. She was bothering me. I wanted her gone." I felt my chest tighten. "Bothering you? She's a puppy, smaller than your backpack. How could you even consider hurting her?" Rage mixed with disbelief, and suddenly all the years of small conflicts, hidden resentments, and silent competitions between us flashed before my eyes. "You threw her off the terrace. Do you understand what that means? She could have died," I yelled, tears streaming down my face. "She trusted you. She trusted us, and you betrayed that trust in the worst way possible." She shrugged, a cruel, almost indifferent motion. "It's just a puppy. Stop exaggerating." Her words struck me harder than any physical blow ever could. I felt my hands clench into fists, my teeth grinding with a mix of grief and fury. How could someone so close, someone I had loved and relied on my entire life, be so heartless? I looked down at Bella, sleeping peacefully now in her bed, and felt a renewed surge of protectiveness. She was the innocent party here, the one who had suffered without reason. And I realized that my anger wasn't just for her. It was for every bond, every trust, every unspoken understanding that my sister had shattered in that moment. "I'm done pretending this is a family problem we can sweep under the rug," I said, my voice cold now, steadier than before. "You need to understand the consequences of what you did. Not just for her, but for how you've destroyed our relationship. And you will never, ever hurt her or me again." For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, maybe guilt, maybe fear, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. She said nothing, leaving the room with the same indifferent stride, and I felt the finality of it. This confrontation was not a momentary argument. It was the first irreversible fracture in what I had once called a family bond. That night, I held Bella close, letting her warmth fill the emptiness left by my sister's betrayal. I whispered to her, promising that I would always be her safe place, her home, her family. No one, not even my own sister, could take that away from us again. I realized something crucial. Protecting Bella would not just be about tending to her wounds. It would be about shielding her from the toxic shadow of someone who should have loved her. And as my tears fell onto her soft fur, I knew that my journey to healing, both hers and mine, was only just beginning. The days after the confrontation were heavy with silence. Bella's body was healing, but the trauma lingered. Every sudden sound, every movement near the terrace made her flinch. I could see it in her eyes. The fragile trust she had placed in the world had been shaken, and it was my job to rebuild it, brick by brick. I had tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but my sister's presence in the house became unbearable. Every glance, every careless word from her made my chest tighten. I realized that what she had done wasn't just a single act. It was a breach of safety, a deliberate violation of the one rule that had always existed between us: do no harm. Bella would not forget, and I feared that I would not either. I found myself becoming hyper-aware, protective to a degree I hadn't imagined. I blocked the terrace, kept her close at all times, and refused to leave her alone. Each night, I slept beside her, listening to her small, steady breaths, as if her life depended on my vigilance, which, after that day, it truly did. The betrayal forced me to reflect on my sister in a way I had never dared. Had I been blind to her cruelty? Or had this act simply revealed what had always been there, hidden beneath smiles and family dinners? Anger bubbled beneath the surface, raw and relentless. I wanted to confront her again, to demand answers, but I knew it would only escalate the tension and risk Bella's fragile recovery. Friends and family began noticing my shift in behavior. Some asked if I was overreacting, calling it just a puppy, but I couldn't explain it without reliving the horror. Bella wasn't just a puppy. She was a living being whose life had been threatened, whose trust had been shattered by the one person I expected to protect her. And that trust, once broken, is never easily repaired. I began keeping a journal, documenting each day's progress in Bella's recovery. I recorded her small victories, walking a little farther, wagging her tail again, playing gently with her favorite toys. Each milestone felt monumental, a reminder that love and care could heal wounds that cruelty had inflicted. And yet, the fear lingered. I couldn't shake the image of her falling, the terror in her eyes, the cold calm of my sister as she let it happen. It haunted me in every quiet moment, a shadow looming over our once normal home. I realized that healing wasn't just about Bella's body. It was about reclaiming safety, reclaiming trust, and learning to live again without constant fear. At night, I whispered to Bella, promising that I would never let anyone hurt her again. And as I stroked her fur, I began to understand a deeper truth. Love alone wasn't enough. I needed boundaries, protection, and perhaps even distance from those who would bring harm, no matter their relationship to me. The days stretched into weeks, and slowly, Bella's spirit began to return. But the fracture between my sister and me had become an unspoken chasm, one that no apology could cross, one that no explanation could repair. I knew that our lives had changed forever, and the only thing I could control now was the safety and love I offered to the little life in my arms. Weeks turned into a month, and Bella's body slowly began to heal. Her fractured leg mended, her bruises faded, but the trauma lingered in subtle ways. She flinched at sudden movements, hitting corners when loud noises echoed through the house, and sometimes whimpered softly in her sleep. I spent every waking moment by her side, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered, but I could feel the lingering shadow of fear in her eyes. I had begun to construct invisible walls around both Bella and myself. My sister's presence in the house felt like a constant threat, and even her slightest movement or glance set my heart racing. I found myself avoiding interactions, sidestepping rooms, and keeping Bella close at all times. Every decision now had two calculations: my safety and Bella's. One evening, As I watched Bella play cautiously with a small plush toy, my mind wandered to the stark reality of my situation. Family wasn't always a sanctuary. Sometimes, it could be a battlefield where trust was violated and innocence destroyed. My sister had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And while anger surged through me, I also felt a deep sadness, a mourning for the bond that had once existed and was now irreparably broken. I began to question everything. Had I missed signs of her cruelty before? Were the small incidents of jealousy, subtle put-downs, and cold remarks always indicators of a darker nature? My heart hurt not just for Bella, but for myself, for the person I had trusted blindly. I had grown up thinking family meant safety, loyalty, and protection, but my sister had shattered that illusion. At night, Bella would curl up beside me, her body small and fragile, but her presence grounding me. I whispered to her, making promises I hoped I could keep. I'll never let anyone hurt you again. I'll protect you no matter what. And in those moments, I realized that love alone wasn't enough. It required vigilance, courage, and sometimes difficult decisions to shield the ones you cared for most. The emotional weight was exhausting. I cried silently when Bella slept, my tears a mixture of grief, anger, and helplessness. Each day was a battle between wanting to forgive my sister and knowing that some acts could never be forgotten. Some wounds weren't just physical. They were etched into the soul, carried in the eyes of the innocent who had been harmed. In the evenings, I began to plan small changes in my life, locks on doors, careful supervision of every movement, even considering separate living arrangements. Protecting Bella had become a mission, a responsibility that consumed me entirely. And yet, in the midst of the fear, anger, and exhaustion, I felt a quiet determination taking root. I would not allow cruelty to win. I would not let trauma define her life, or mine. Bella, despite everything, began showing signs of resilience. She would wag her tail slightly when I entered the room, lick my hand, or play gently with her toys. It was a fragile hope, but hope nonetheless. And in that hope, I found my strength, the strength to continue, to confront the harsh reality of betrayal, and to protect the little life that had come to mean everything to me. The tension in the house had grown unbearable. Each day, the air felt heavier, thick with unspoken words and simmering resentment. My sister moved around with a careless nonchalance, unaware, or perhaps indifferent, to the fear and trauma she had inflicted. Bella's timid glances whenever my sister entered a room cut deeper than any words. I knew that things could not continue this way. Something had to change. I spent a sleepless night thinking through my options. I could no longer trust my sister in any capacity, and I realized that protecting Bella meant taking decisive action. It wasn't just about walls, doors, and supervision anymore. It was about drawing boundaries that could not be crossed and making sure my sister faced the reality of her actions. The next morning, I confronted her once again, my voice steady this time, devoid of tears. "This cannot continue," I said firmly. "You've crossed a line, and your actions have consequences. Bella's life, her trust, and my trust in you cannot be taken lightly. You need to understand that what you did is unforgivable if it happens again." She laughed, a cruel, hollow sound that made my blood boil. "You're overreacting," she said. "It was just a puppy. You're being dramatic." Her words lit a fire inside me. I took a deep breath, calming the fury that threatened to consume me, and said, "It doesn't matter what you think. You've endangered a living being, someone who trusted you completely. I will no longer allow you near her unsupervised. If you care about this family, you will respect that." For the first time, I saw hesitation in her eyes, a flicker of awareness that perhaps the world didn't revolve around her desires. But it was fleeting, quickly replaced by a shrug of indifference. I realized then that words alone would not protect Bella. Action was required. I spent the next days implementing strict measures, locking the terrace, creating a safe room for Bella, and informing close family members of what had happened so they could intervene, if necessary. It was not easy. I faced resistance, questions, and thinly veiled judgment, but my priority was clear. Bella's life and her emotional recovery depended on it. Meanwhile, Bella began showing subtle signs of healing. Her trust in me grew stronger, her eyes brighter, her tail wagging more freely. Every small sign of progress was a victory, a reminder that love, care, and protection could overcome even the darkest betrayal. And yet, I couldn't escape the heartbreak. The betrayal had left a scar on my soul. I no longer saw my sister the same way. The bond we once shared had been broken, and though she remained my family by blood, she was no longer safe to love unconditionally. I knew that life would move forward, that Bella would continue to heal, and that I had the power to rebuild her world. But I also knew that the consequences of my sister's actions would linger forever, a reminder that trust is fragile and innocence must be fiercely protected. As I sat beside Bella that night, her head resting on my lap, I whispered softly, "I promise you, no one will ever hurt you again. I'll protect you, even if it means standing alone against the world." And in her gentle sigh, I felt a flicker of hope, a fragile belief that even after betrayal, love and loyalty could survive. Time moved slowly, but with each passing day, Bella's body healed and, more importantly, her spirit began to recover. Her timid glances became confident, her hesitant steps turned into playful runs, and her soft whimpers faded into the joyful barks that once filled my home. Watching her reclaim her innocence was a bittersweet triumph, proof of resilience, yet a reminder of the pain we had endured. I, too, was changing. The fear and anger I had carried like a shadow began to lighten, replaced with a quiet strength. I had learned the hard way that love alone was not enough to protect those we care for. Vigilance, boundaries, and courage were equally essential. Bella's trust had been broken, but with patience, consistency, and unwavering care, it could be rebuilt. My sister remained a presence in the house, but the dynamic had shifted irreversibly. The bond we once shared was fractured, and though she was my family by blood, I knew better than to expect unconditional trust or safety from her. I accepted that reality, setting clear limits to protect both myself and Bella. Forgiveness was not about excusing her actions. It was about reclaiming my peace without allowing her cruelty to control our lives. One evening, as Bella lay curled beside me, I reflected on how fragile life and trust could be. Innocence could be harmed in an instant, and betrayal could come from those we least expect. Yet, resilience was just as powerful. Bella had endured trauma, and yet learned to trust again. I had faced heartbreak and fear, but had chosen action, protection, and love over despair. The emotional wounds lingered, yes, but they also carried lessons. I realized that family does not guarantee safety, and that protecting those we love sometimes requires difficult choices, standing firm against harm, even from someone you care about deeply. Bella's recovery mirrored my own, slow, cautious, but ultimately triumphant. In those quiet moments, I also found gratitude. Gratitude for the chance to rebuild Bella's life, for the small victories of trust regained, and for the clarity that came from facing the darkest betrayal. Each wag of her tail, each nuzzle, each gentle lick was a reminder that love, patience, and protection could heal even the deepest scars. I had learned to navigate fear, to establish boundaries, and to cherish innocence in a world that could sometimes be cruel. Bella and I had formed a bond stronger than ever, a bond forged through love, trauma, and unwavering care. She was my responsibility, my companion, and my family, and I vowed to protect her for the rest of her days. And though my sister remained a part of my life in some capacity, the lesson was clear. Some actions change relationships forever. Trust, once broken, must be rebuilt carefully, if at all. Love can survive betrayal, but only when paired with courage, vigilance, and a steadfast refusal to allow harm to continue. As Bella rested her head on my lap that night, I whispered softly, "We made it. You're safe now, and I'll never let anyone hurt you again." In her quiet, trusting eyes, I saw our shared triumph, the resilience of the innocent and the unbreakable bond between a protector and the one she loved most.